Space. The final frontier. These are the voyages of the starship EDENS, its ongoing mission to explore the vast expanse of space, seeking out new and unknown adventures, to boldly go where no series has gone before. But are these voyages really worth spending your precious time on? Well, stick around and I will tell you everything you need to know about the newest series from the mind of Hiro Mishimas, EDENS. Hello Internet, Jojo here, and welcome to Ideashock, where we have something a bit different. So far on my channel, I've done a lot of calculating feats and abilities of characters like Luffy or Zoro or Cloud Strife, but this time I'm going to give a brief-ish intro into a relatively young series that I think all you guys will like, the series EDENS. Now, if someone was to ask me to describe EDENS in one sentence, I would have to go with, it's One Piece, but in space. That's honestly the best way to describe it. If you like One Piece, then I think you will absolutely love EDENS. I do imagine that a few of you are probably thinking, wait, EDENS? It can't be that good. After all, it was made by the guy who made Fairy Tail, and the power of friendship is stupid. And to that, I say, yes, it was made by Hiro Mishimas, but this series is a far cry from the tone and storytelling of Fairy Tail. Get this, there are moments where characters actually do try to use the power of friendship, only to get themselves absolutely demolished. So, if the power of friendship thing always bothered you, then I think that you will take to EDENS like a dragon does to space. That's a EDENS reference. It'll make sense in a few minutes. So, that said, I hope you guys are ready, because you and me are about to dive headfirst into the meat and tomatoes of the EDENS story, as I am about to give you the TLDW of the series' first arc. A young boy gazes up into the sky and sees a streaming bolt of light. The friendly armor-clad knight by his side tells him gently, "That's a dragon." The fact that the knight is joking is not important, but what is important is the look of wonder on the boy's face. Years later, that same boy found himself staring down the first human other than himself that he had ever met. This girl was short, she was blonde and accompanied by a weird cat. Upon looking at him, this girl proceeded to freak out and run away as fast as she possibly could. However, when she got back to the town of only robotic citizens, the strange boy was already there. After she calmed down a bit, the boy introduced himself as Shiki, and the girl introduced herself as Rebecca. Luckily, they hit it off better the second time, and Rebecca realized that Shiki was unlike any other person she'd ever met, in the sense that he was a complete space hillbilly with the power to manipulate gravity. In this conversation, Rebecca explained that she had flown her spaceship from the planet Blue Garden in order to come to Shiki's home planet, Planet Granbell, and Shiki told her that he, the only human on the planet, was responsible for repairing the native robots when they required it. As the conversation progressed, Rebecca went on to tell Shiki that she was a beekeeper, basically the EDENS equivalent of YouTuber, who also dabbled in adventuring. After more conversation and a non-consensual haircut, don't worry, Shiki was asleep. Wait, that doesn't make it better. Anyways, as soon as the native robots heard that she had a ship, they began to become hostile towards both of these humans. This shocked Shiki, as they were practically his family. He had grown up with them ever since he could remember. Not understanding why they were getting so violent, Shiki desperately asked them. The answer to Shiki's question came from the current ruler, King Castellan. The king explained that all the robots here have been trapped on this planet for years with no way of getting off. But now that a human with a ship had landed on this planet, they could finally leave. Once his explanation ended, King Castellan attacked Shiki and initiated a fight. Only a few seconds after the fight started, Shiki used his powers to break the ground and create a massive hole, dropping all the hostile robots into it. Grabbing Rebecca, Shiki used his powers to fall horizontally until they were out of the city and near her ship. Once they got aboard and began their ascent out of the atmosphere, Shiki looked back and began to cry. Little did he know that these robots had only just put on an act with the sole intention of forcing Shiki to begin his journey through space. As the last robot fell to the ground, finally reaching its expiration date, an image of Shiki's grandfather flashed in his mind. In this scene that played out, Shiki's grandfather, Ziggy, explained that Shiki would never leave the planet unless he was forced to. He told the robots that, as soon as the ship arrived on the planet, they had to make Shiki leave. They had to do this because Ziggy told them that Shiki would someday change the cosmos, and that he could not do it from here. Something in Shiki realized this as he mourned the death of his friends, but he knew that he could not stay crying forever. Once he wiped his eyes, he looked out of the window of Rebecca's ship and saw a sight to behold. It was a streaming bolt of light, but this time he did not need his grandfather to tell him what it was. He could see it with his own eyes. That was a dragon. Upon looking at this creature, Shiki knew that his story was only just beginning. Now, everything that I've just said only covers the very first chapter of Eden Zero. In fact, it might be one of the best opening chapters that I've ever read, as it gets you right into the story immediately while developing the characters and setting up the rest of the story. Shiki continues his adventure and soon acquires a spaceship, which is the namesake of the series, the Eden Zero. I don't want to spoil things, but if you've read One Piece, then you will understand the significance of me saying that the Eden Zero is this universe's Oro Jackson. On the same topic, Shiki's overall goal is to find and meet the matriarch of the cosmos, only known as Mother. She's the Eden Zero version of the One Piece from One Piece. Now, we don't know much about her other than the rumor that if they find her, she will grant their wish. Each of the cast, save for the Shining Stars, does in fact have a wish they want to be granted, with Rebecca wanting to be the next PewDiePie, and Shiki planning on going all Aladdin on us and using his wish to become friends with Mother. Though, after some specific events go down, he changes his wish to something more in line with his character. If you couldn't tell, this entire series is incredibly like One Piece, and I mean that in the best possible way. But it's also different enough to be something completely new and refreshing. There are characters like Elsie Crimson, who is this series' red-haired Shanks, there is the Star System Alliance Force, which is like the world government, and then there's the idea of finding some legendary thing that no one else has found before. But there are many ways that Eden Zero diverges from the One Piece formula. Shiki's crew are not handpicked like many of the Straw Hats, instead they were mostly gathered out of necessity and random chance. That is, all of them except for the 4 shining stars of the Eden Zero. These are 4 androids that served on this ship before Shiki became a captain, but now they serve as very important members of his crew. There's the Witch Regret, Sister Ivory, who also happens to be one of my favorite characters in the series, Hermit Million, and Valkyrie Yuna. Each of these android women has a unique job that is vital for the function of Eden Zero and helps it reach its full potential. Without them, the ship is pretty much nothing special. Of course, these androids are not the only crew members, but talking about the rest will be getting into some spoilers territory, and honestly, learning about them is half the fun. Now, like many great stories, Eden Zero has a theme running through the very fabric of the entire series. So far, there's been one major and consistently overarching theme. This is a theme and idea of what makes someone a person. The series goes out of its way to explain that it's not whether a person is a human or a robot, but what makes a person is if they have a heart. Obviously, I'm not talking about an actual heart, but heart in the context of things like emotions, desires, and relationships with others. In a way, it's the exact opposite of what Fairy Tail was known for. Fairy Tail is notoriously known for the idea of your friends being the source of your strength. While you do see glimpses of that in Eden Zero, and making friends is a big part of Shiki's personality, there's no more of it in this series than there are in any other series. In fact, I would go so far as to say that Eden Zero is the exact opposite of that. After all, there are several times that we are shown that the power of friendship doesn't work here. But the best part is, even Hiro Mishimas pokes fun at the idea. He kills off a main character after they try to use the power of friendship in the middle of a fight. Like, he kills them off immediately, dead. They are so dead that nothing short of the Holy Grail, zombification, or, I don't know, time travel would bring them back. So, unlike Fairy Tail's theme of your friends being there in spirit to help you and give you strength, the idea of having a heart is a bit more specific, personal, and individual. It's similar to having sentience, but anyone can be sentient and be without a heart. The series describes heart as having the ability to cry, laugh, and even worry. So what I got from that is that a person has a heart when they can see the value of someone else for who that person is, and not what that person can do for them. It's the concept of being able to value others because they are people, and never taking their innate value for granted. Eden Zero uses the idea of heart to turn androids into people and make monsters out of the villains. Just about all the villains in this series so far are defined by their ability to use people and then throw them away when they have no more use for them. These villains treat people like objects with only superficial value. And the ironic thing is, in many ways, this becomes a major factor in the villain's own downfall. On that same note, I feel like I need to mention that the tone of Eden Zero is actually surprisingly dark at various times. There's a space-time dragon that goes around killing entire populations of planets by erasing them from existence. There's a villain that turns people to stone and then uses them as furniture, a woman who abandoned her own daughter, became a dictator, enslaved the planet, and then later enslaved the daughter that she abandoned to work in her mines. She's probably the most unredeemable character in this series so far. Seriously, when we first meet this villain, she's literally interviewing an intergalactic supermodel for the position of her butler, and when she decides that she doesn't like him, she melts his face. All this to say that this series does go to some dark places. Now, don't worry, it doesn't show anything, it isn't Berserk. Yet, despite how dark it gets, Eden Zero is still surprisingly lighthearted. It can be dark one minute and then light the next, and it does this all without feeling out of place and flowing incredibly well. The dynamic of the characters feels realistic, and each of them are fleshed out very well by brief but hard-hitting flashbacks sprinkled in every so often. One of the many things that I noticed was the relationship between the characters. You can just feel that the four shining stars have a long history together because of how they act. They come across as far more mature than the rest, and act as both teacher and friend to the new, younger crew members. Something else that stood out was that every character on the crew was able to bring something new and unique to the table. Yeah, you heard that right. Even Rebecca offers something other than the, obvious. In fact, she's actually kinda awesome. Like, seriously. Oh yeah, before I forget, yes, Happy does exist in this universe, but not really. It's a thing, don't worry about it, it'll make sense if you start reading. So, after all this, what would I rate the story out of 100? Well, while I do love it, like, a lot, it only feels right to give it 85 out of 100 points. It loses 15 points because, other than having a very broad end goal, the characters tend to lack a deeper motivation for many of their actions. What I mean by that is that, so far, the Eden Zero crew has really only been reacting to events around them, not actively making the world react to them. It's a cause and effect kind of thing. Of course, this is likely because the series is still very young. After all, Shiki has only just finished gathering the four shining stars, and only recently declared the start of their journey to find Mother. However, despite that, how they react to the world around them is fantastic and well written. Incidentally, it almost lost under 10 points or so because of something that happened in a relatively recent chapter, but luckily it was handled surprisingly well, better than most series do, so no points lost there. As to the quality of the manga's art, it manages to score a 90. It's incredibly precise and clean, every panel has something new to see in it, and I just have to say, the way Mishima draws planets reminds me of how Toriko's author draws food, with great detail and endlessly sparkling. However, it's no One Punch Man or Berserk, which are probably the only two series that I would ever give a perfect score for art. The series' precise art, the spot-on character designs, and the way that the planet Blue Garden is drawn make for a very unique story that is unlike anything that I've seen in years. It feels both fantastical and sci-fi at the same time, and those are things that rarely go together well. Typically, when you mix things like this, one of them always overpowers the other, but this feels like sci-fi and fantasy. As I mentioned before, Eden Zero does an exceptional job when it comes to characters and how they develop. But even before the characters go through much development, you get a feel for who they are. Within only a few chapters of meeting most characters, you know exactly how they will react in most situations. You just get a feel for the character almost instantaneously. Now, when it comes to a character's history, Hiro Mishima tends to give 1 or 2 page flashbacks at important parts of the story. And while they are short, they communicate all you need to know in order to make you connect with the character. Mishima is able to get an entire backstory across to the reader as well as convey what the character is feeling in that moment in only a very few pages. So there are no long flashback arcs like One Piece has. The story is consistently moving forward. When you read them, they do tend to go by pretty fast and you might even forget about them a little bit, but the impact the flashback has stays in your accumulated knowledge of these characters. So for the quality of characters, Eden Zero ends with another 85 out of 100. Lastly, we got the world building of Eden Zero. Hiro Mishima knows what he's doing here. While the vast expanse of the cosmos is unexplored, there is a lot that has been set up and make the universe feel so much larger. The chronophage, Mother, Elsie, the Irration Space Galaxia, guilds, space travel, dragons, Xiaomei, Star System Alliance Force, Ether, the Demon King, black holes, and way more. There are enough storylines that are active right now to last at least 300 more chapters while moving at this current pace. All of these story threads weave together to make the universe feel massive. It feels like what we see the main cast doing is only a tiny part of the big universe. This impressive and immersive world ends up scoring Eden Zero with a 90 out of 100. Eden Zero could have gotten a higher score, but the fact that it's still new is what's keeping me from doing that. At this current point, these characters in the world has so much potential that if handled right, it could end up becoming the next One Piece. Actually, Eden Zero has way better world building now at this point than One Piece did when it was only 100 chapters in. Now, in case you're wondering, one of the main reasons that I'm making this video at all is because I really want to introduce more people to the series and characters, because it's really good. So, if it's intrigued you at all, then take a look at Eden Zero. Then, once you check it out, come back here and let me know what you think about it, and if I was blinded by my love of space adventures. So, with that all said guys, thanks for watching, see you next time, remember to stay spectacular, JoJo, out.